When your life plan falls apart, the very first thing you must do is acknowledge the disruption, not just intellectually, emotionally, practically, deeply. So many people try to bypass this step. They slap on a positive quote, post something vague about trusting the process, and pretend they're fine. That's not resilience, that's avoidance, and avoidance delays your ability to move forward. You don't have to sit in a pit of despair, but you do have to get honest about where you are and what just happened. Your plan didn't work. Maybe you spent years building towards something that didn't come to life. Maybe you thought you'd be married by now. Maybe you started a business that didn't take off. Maybe you invested in a relationship, a degree, a career path, and it just didn't turn out. That's not just frustrating, it's destabilizing. And here's the hard truth. If you try to jump straight into fixing things without fully acknowledging the break, you'll end up rebuilding on unstable ground. Acknowledging the disruption means admitting that something broke, not necessarily that you broke, but that your current model, your current approach, your current assumptions didn't hold. It's about stepping back and saying, okay, that didn't go the way I planned, and I feel that. You might feel angry, confused, embarrassed, or numb. That's all valid. Emotional maturity doesn't mean ignoring disappointment, it means processing it without letting it paralyze you. There's power in saying out loud, this didn't work, not with shame. With clarity, it doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean your future is gone. It just means the blueprint you were following has reached its end, and that's important to see, because if you can't name that, you'll cling to a dead version of your life out of habit. You'll keep walking a path that's already crumbled underneath you, hoping it will magically rebuild itself. It won't, so pause, take stock, let yourself feel the impact. Did your timeline shift? Did your sense of identity take a hit? Are you grieving a version of yourself or your life you were attached to? That's not weakness, that's awareness, and awareness is where new strategies are born. You cannot strategize from denial. You cannot lead yourself from a lie. This is where you set the foundation for the next phase, not from pretending the pain doesn't exist, but by choosing to meet it directly. When you acknowledge the disruption, you reclaim control. That may sound strange, but it's true. Because the moment you stop fighting the reality of the failure, you create space to start learning from it. You move from why me to what now, and that shift is massive, because why me keeps you stuck in the story of defeat. But what now? That's where possibility opens up again. This is not the moment to judge yourself. This is the moment to lead yourself, and leadership doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. So be present with the mess. Be present with the ending. Be present with the part of you that's disappointed. That doesn't mean you indulge in self-pity. It means you give yourself the honesty you'd give a teammate. Hey, this didn't go how we thought. Let's regroup. Everyone wants the roadmap, the step-by-step on how to come back. But here's the truth most people avoid. You don't get the map until you admit you're off course. That's the price of clarity. And the people who rise after failure aren't the ones who had all the answers. They're the ones who were brave enough to face the moment without spinning it, without shrinking from it, without pretending it didn't matter. So start here. Say it. This plan didn't work. Feel the sting if there is one. Don't rush it, don't dramatize it. Just own it. That's where your comeback begins. Because from this place, from truth, you can build again, better, clearer, stronger. When your life plan fails, one of the most important things you must do is separate your identity from the outcome. That failure, the one you're looking at, the one that hurts, the one that threw you completely off track, is not a reflection of who you are. It's a reflection of what you did, what you attempted, what happened. But it's not you. We live in a culture where results are everything. We're told that our worth is tied to our productivity, our titles, our milestones. So when we don't hit a goal or when a plan collapses, it's incredibly easy to fall into the trap of thinking you are the failure. That's the mindset that keeps people stuck, because when you internalize failure as identity, it becomes incredibly hard to move forward. You're not just changing a plan, you're rebuilding your sense of self. But here's the truth, your outcome is just data. It tells you what happened, not who you are. If a launch flopped, if a relationship ended, if your job fell apart, or if the version of life you worked toward crumbled, those are events. They are not your core, they are not your character, they are not your capability, and they absolutely do not define your future unless you let them. Think of it like this: a surgeon makes a mistake during a procedure. Does that mean they're no longer a surgeon? Of course not. It means they need to learn, reassess, grow. It doesn't erase their skills, their training, their calling. The same applies to you. Just because you hit a wall doesn't mean you're not built for the vision you have. It just means the current execution needs to shift. You are not your results, and you're certainly not your worst result. You are your response. That's where your power lies. How you handle what didn't work says more about you than whether it worked or not. Because outcomes are fluid, they can change, they often do. Who you are, your values, your drive, your character, that's the constant. That's what you carry forward. There's also something powerful that happens when you step back and say, "This failed, but I didn't." You take away the shame. You take away the emotional weight that turns one setback into a full identity crisis. You give yourself permission to learn instead of just trying to survive the embarrassment. And when you're able to separate the outcome from your identity, your mindset changes from "I'm not good enough" to "I have work to do." That shift is everything. It's what allows you to be objective, because when you believe your failure is you, you stop being curious, you get defensive, you spiral. But when you say, "This didn't go the way I wanted. Let me figure out why," now you're in growth. Now you're moving. Now you're building momentum again. This isn't about ego. It's about truth. And the truth is, success is never a straight line. Anyone who has built anything meaningful has hit points where things didn't work. The difference between those who quit and those who level up is that the second group doesn't collapse their identity into every win or loss. They don't say, "I failed, so I'm a failure." They say, "This is part of it. This is what growth looks like. Your outcomes will fluctuate." They always will. That's normal. But if your identity is so tightly tied to external success, you'll always be on shaky ground. The moment something shifts, and it will, you'll break. But when you know who you are regardless of the results, you become unshakable. This is your invitation to create that kind of unshakable self. Detach from the need to be your result. Yes, care deeply about what you do. Yes, put in the work, but don't make your self-worth conditional on whether the outcome plays out exactly the way you imagined. Because plans can fail and still lead to purpose. Projects can crash and still teach you everything you needed. You can miss the mark and still be right on time for the next thing. So take a breath. Look at the result. Own it, learn from it, but don't wear it. Don't carry it as your identity. It's not a label. It's just a lesson. You are not your failure. You are the person strong enough to rise from it. That's the story you write now. That's the energy that carries you forward. Not because it's easy, but because you're no longer pretending that what you didn't achieve gets to define you. It doesn't. Only you do. After you've acknowledged that your life plan has failed and separated your identity from the outcome, the next step is to reassess with brutal honesty, not surface-level reflection, not a feel-good recap. Brutal honesty, that means looking at what went wrong with clarity, not excuses. If you're not willing to be uncomfortably truthful with yourself, you're going to repeat the exact same mistakes. And at that point, it's not the plan that's broken. It's your refusal to grow. You cannot move forward effectively if you won't look backward accurately. So ask yourself, what actually happened here? Not what you wish had happened. Not what you tell people at dinner parties. The truth. Maybe you didn't plan deeply enough. Maybe you moved too fast. Maybe you ignored the red flags. Maybe you got lazy with the details. Maybe you let fear drive your decisions. It's hard to admit those things. But if you want to rebuild stronger, you need to start from what is, not from what sounds better. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They either inflate their effort, telling themselves they did everything right and the world just didn't respond, or they catastrophize the situation and declare they're just not cut out for the goal at all. Both extremes are a trap. Brutal honesty leaves in the middle. It says, "I did some things well. I dropped the ball in others. Here's what both look like." That takes courage. It also takes a willingness to hold yourself accountable without tearing yourself apart. You're not doing this to punish yourself. You're doing this to identify the gaps so you don't fall through them again. And you'll be shocked at how much clarity that brings when you let yourself see the situation without filters. Start with the facts. What were the key decisions that led you here? Who was involved? What expectations weren't met? Did you track the data? Or were you operating on emotion? Were you clear about your priorities? Or were you guessing as you went? You might be surprised how many of your answers show a lack of precision, not a lack of potential. And that's the point. Clarity shows you what's really broken so you can fix it at the root. This is not the time for blaming others either. Maybe someone else dropped the ball. Maybe a partner ghosted. Maybe a boss failed to deliver. Fine. But what did you miss? What boundaries did you not enforce? What warning signs did you ignore because you didn't want the discomfort of confrontation? This isn't about fault. It's about responsibility. If you're the kind of person who wants to take control of your life, then you don't get to outsource your learning. Even if someone else contributed to the failure, your growth still depends on what you take from it. There's a difference between being hard on yourself and being honest with yourself. People love to say they're self-aware, but real self-awareness doesn't feel gentle. It feels uncomfortable. You feel it in your stomach. It makes you pause, because it's not just about knowing what happened. It's about admitting your part in it. And that's where power starts to build. If you're brave enough to be that honest, you can create a new plan that actually works. Not a fantasy plan, not a perfect Instagram version, a real one, because now you know what didn't work. You've got data, you've got insight, you've got experience. All of that becomes part of your next move, but only if you stop sugarcoating the past. This process also helps you see what actually was working. Sometimes it's not a total failure. Sometimes the execution was off, but the vision was still right. Brutal honesty shows you the difference. It lets you preserve the valuable pieces instead of throwing everything away in frustration. It separates the noise from the substance, and may be the most important part of all. This kind of honesty builds self-trust. Because when you stop lying to yourself, when you stop trying to protect your ego, you start to realize that you can handle the truth. You can face what went wrong without falling apart, and that resilience, that's the real win. That's what makes you unstoppable moving forward. So go there, ask the hard questions, look at the uncomfortable facts, don't soften the blow, because it's the sharp edges that shape you. The next version of your life depends on this moment. Don't waste it hiding from the truth. Use it, build with it. Let brutal honesty be your launch pad, not because it feels good, but because it works. When your life plan falls apart, the temptation is to start from scratch, to burn everything down, question everything you've ever believed, and tell yourself you need a completely new direction. But most of the time, you don't need a new destination. You need to refocus on your core vision. The collapse of your plan isn't a sign that your dream was wrong. It's a sign that the route you took wasn't the right one, or maybe it was just incomplete. The vision doesn't have to die with the plan. It just needs your attention again. That's where people lose momentum. They confuse a failed tactic with a failed purpose. But a tactic is temporary. A vision is foundational. So instead of abandoning everything, pause and ask yourself, what was I really trying to build? Strip away the methods, the timing, the expectations. What's underneath? What matters most? If you can't answer that, you weren't working from a true vision in the first place. You were executing on goals, not purpose. And there's a difference. Goals can be checked off or missed. Visions anchor you. They're the deeper why behind all the plans. And when everything falls apart, reconnecting to that why is what keeps you from drifting. So take a moment. Close your eyes if you need to. Go back to the beginning. Not the start of your last plan, but the start of your desire. What did you want? Not just what did you say you wanted, but what did you feel drawn toward? Maybe you wanted freedom. Maybe you wanted to make a difference. Maybe you wanted to create something that outlasts you. That's your vision. That's the thread that stays steady, even when the rest of your life unravels. Refocusing on that vision brings clarity. You start to see what's still aligned, what was never aligned, and what needs to be recalibrated. It helps you sort through the noise of failure, the fear, the disappointment, the doubt, and come back to the signal, this is what matters. And that doesn't just ground you, it guides you. Maybe your last plan got too focused on the metrics. Maybe it started out with heart and turned into a checklist. Maybe you let someone else's idea of success hijack your vision. Refocusing is your chance to take your vision back, to lead from it again, to let it speak louder than your fear, louder than your ego, louder than your past. This is also where you rebuild your energy. Because chasing outcomes can drain you, especially when they don't land, but reconnecting to vision, that refuels you. Because now you're not just reacting, you're choosing, you're not chasing the next quick fix. You're aligning with something real, something rooted, something that makes the work worth it again. The truth is, your plan might have collapsed because you drifted too far from your vision without realizing it. Maybe you got busy. Maybe you started chasing validation. Maybe you lost sight of the bigger picture in the grind. It happens. Refocusing is about waking back up, coming back home to what actually lights you up, not what you thought you were supposed to chase. And when you do that, something powerful happens. The pressure lifts, because now you're not trying to prove something. You're not scrambling to rebuild just for the sake of having a plan again. You're moving with intention, with purpose, and that shows up in the quality of your next steps. They're sharper, cleaner, more grounded, because they're anchored in vision, not panic. This doesn't mean your next plan will be perfect. It won't be, but it will be connected. And connection is what carries you through hard seasons. You don't need a flawless roadmap. You need a direction that actually means something to you. You need a reason to keep showing up, even when results take time, even when momentum is slow, even when no one else sees what you see. That's what vision does. It's not just about ambition. It's about alignment. It's about building a life that actually reflects who you are and what you value, not just what looks impressive from the outside. That's why you refocus, not to rescue your pride, but to reclaim your path. So if everything fell apart, let it break. Let the wrong plans burn out, but then get quiet. Come back to the core. Ask yourself, what was I trying to create? What still feels true? That's your compass. That's where you start again, and this time you're not guessing. You're not grabbing at ideas. You're choosing from alignment. You're leading from vision, and that makes all the difference. After you've acknowledged the disruption, separated your identity from the outcome, and reconnected with your core vision, there's only one thing left to do: move, not perfectly, not with every detail figured out. Just move, take swift, imperfect action, because clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. You can journal for days, analyze every angle, talk to 10 mentors, and map out 20 contingency plans. But none of it will matter unless you actually act. This is the place where people stall the most. They convince themselves they're being strategic, when really they're just afraid. They wait until the fear is gone. They wait until the plan is bulletproof. They wait until they're confident. But confidence doesn't come before action. It's a result of action. The more you do, the more you trust yourself. The more you move, the more feedback you get. And the faster you move, the faster you learn. Imperfect action beats perfect hesitation every time. If your last plan failed, odds are you've already been sitting in discomfort. Maybe it's been weeks, months, even years, and now your brain is trying to protect you by saying, "Don't move until you know it'll work." But that's the exact mindset that will keep you in the same cycle. Nothing you start will ever feel 100% guaranteed. So the question is, are you going to wait for perfect, or are you going to build momentum? Taking action, even messy, awkward, uncertain action, creates leverage. You put one piece on the board and suddenly the next piece gets clearer. You make one decision and that decision exposes the next two. But when you stay still, everything feels blurry. You keep spinning, overthinking, questioning your every move, and eventually you exhaust yourself into inaction. Not because you're lazy, but because you're paralyzed by the illusion that the perfect plan is still out there. It's not. The perfect plan doesn't exist. What exists is a next step, one step, not the final outcome, not the 5, year map. Just one forward motion that brings you closer to what you want. And that step, it's almost always available. You don't need to have the whole staircase to take the first stair. That's where real momentum is born. So maybe you need to send the email, launch the new project, make the phone call. Ask the hard question. Post the thing you've been editing for months. It's going to feel raw. You're going to doubt yourself. People might not respond how you want them to. But if you can move anyway, if you can choose progress over perfection, you start building something new. The point isn't to be reckless. The point is to stop hiding behind preparation. You've already learned from the failure. You've already done the internal work. Now it's time to re-enter the arena. And when you do, don't be afraid to fail again. Failure isn't the enemy anymore. Inaction is. One imperfect move puts you miles ahead of someone who's still on the sidelines waiting for certainty. The longer you wait, the heavier the doubt gets. But the moment you act, you cut through the noise. You say to yourself, I'm not here to get it perfect. I'm here to get it done. And that mindset, that's what gets results. You don't need permission. You don't need another sign. You don't need to be 100% ready. Readiness is a myth. No one feels ready for the next level. They rise to it. They get into the room and figure it out. They take the stage and grow into it. And that starts by showing up, even when it's messy. And here's the best part. The people who are truly building things, who are really going after something, aren't judging your imperfect steps. They respect them because they know what it costs to take action when it's scary. They know what it feels like to put yourself out there after a setback. That's real leadership. That's real courage. So if you're waiting for a sign, this is it. Don't spend another week stuck in analysis. Don't spend another day pretending you need to feel ready. Make the call, press publish, show up, act, fail forward, learn faster, adjust as you go, let the momentum build. Because in the end, it's not the perfect plan that changes your life. It's the action you're willing to take before you feel ready. You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going.